When communication ceases and silence takes over, an intricate psychological shift begins to unfold. This phenomenon is not just about the absence of words, it is about the profound space silence creates, compelling an individual to confront their emotions, thoughts, and actions in ways that ordinary dialogue cannot achieve. For men, this shift can be particularly revealing, as silence often disrupts the equilibrium they rely on in their interactions. It pushes them into a state of introspection, where the absence of communication becomes a mirror reflecting their behavior and decisions. Men, like anyone else, are creatures of habit. They grow accustomed to the rhythms and patterns of interaction with those close to them. When those patterns are disrupted, when you stop talking to him, it creates a vacuum. This absence of communication speaks volumes, becoming a loud and unavoidable presence in his mind. Suddenly, he is forced to listen to the echoes of his own actions and decisions. Without your voice to fill the space, he has no choice but to confront the silence, which becomes a relentless reminder of what has been lost or put at risk. Silence is not passive. It actively compels reflection. For men, who are often socialized to avoid openly discussing or processing their emotions, this can be an uncomfortable yet transformative experience. Without external validation or guidance, they must turn inward. This introspection may lead to realizations about how their behavior has contributed to the current situation. It forces them to face questions they might have been avoiding. Why did she stop talking to me? What did I do to push her away? Am I willing to take responsibility and make amends? These are not easy questions to confront, but they are necessary for growth. Moreover, silence challenges a man's sense of control. In relationships, whether romantic, familial, or platonic, communication is often a tool used to negotiate power dynamics. When you withdraw communication, you effectively shift the balance of power. It's no longer about what he says or does, it's about how he responds to the absence of your words. This shift can be unsettling, as it forces him to recognize that he does not have complete control over the situation. He must grapple with the realization that his actions or inactions have consequences that are beyond his immediate influence. This process of grappling with silence also exposes a man's true priorities and values. Some men, when faced with the discomfort of silence, may choose to retreat further, avoiding the emotional work required to mend the relationship. Others, however, will step up. They will acknowledge the impact of their behavior and make genuine efforts to address the root causes of the disconnect. This differentiation is crucial because it reveals who is truly willing to invest in the relationship and who is not. The psychological impact of silence goes beyond self-reflection and power dynamics. It also touches on the concept of accountability. Without the distraction of ongoing dialogue, a man is left alone with his conscience. He is forced to revisit past conversations, recall your words, and reconsider his actions. In this state, accountability becomes unavoidable. Silence becomes a teacher, showing him the areas where he fell short and offering him an opportunity to take responsibility for his role in the breakdown of communication. For many men, this period of introspection leads to a deep emotional response. They may feel regret for the actions or words that led to your silence. They may experience a sense of loss, recognizing the value of your presence only in its absence. Some may even feel a newfound appreciation for the connection they had with you, realizing that it was something they took for granted. These emotions can be powerful motivators, driving them to change their behavior and make amends. However, not every man will respond to silence in the same way. Some may resist the lessons it offers, choosing instead to blame you for the lack of communication or to rationalize their behavior to avoid discomfort. This resistance is telling, as it highlights their unwillingness to grow or take responsibility. It is a reminder that silence, while transformative for those who are open to its lessons, is not a universal solution. It can only reveal the truth. It cannot force someone to change. Ultimately, the psychology of silence is a profound testament to the power of absence. It demonstrates that sometimes the most impactful thing you can say is nothing at all. By stepping back and creating space, you allow the other person to confront their own thoughts and emotions, paving the way for growth and understanding. Whether a man chooses to rise to the challenge of silence or to avoid it altogether, the truth of his character will become evident. Silence, when used intentionally, is not about punishment or manipulation. It is about creating an environment where clarity can emerge, clarity for him and for you. It is a way to honor your boundaries, prioritize your well-being, and give the other person the opportunity to reflect on their actions. It is not an easy path to take, but it is often a necessary one. And in the end, the lessons learned through silence can be more profound and lasting than any words ever spoken. When communication stops, it often triggers an emotional response that many don't anticipate. For men, especially those who may not be as accustomed to openly discussing or processing their emotions, the void left by silence can be a powerful force. It's not just about what's missing, it's about what the absence reveals. Silence has a way of uncovering feelings that were buried, neglected, or underestimated. When you stop talking to him, it's not just your words he misses, it's the connection, the reassurance, and the presence that he may have taken for granted. Men often operate within structures of emotional stability, relying on the predictability of relationships to navigate their feelings. When communication is severed, that stability is disrupted. The emotional response to this disruption can manifest in various ways. Some men might feel confusion, wondering why the lines of communication have been cut. Others might experience frustration directed either at themselves for causing the silence or at you for initiating it. However, the most profound response is often an overwhelming sense of loss. It's in this silence that a man begins to realize the depth of what he had. This realization is not immediate. At first, the silence might feel like a temporary glitch, something that will resolve itself in time. But as the days pass, the weight of the absence grows. It becomes apparent that this isn't just a pause, it's a shift. And with this shift comes a flood of emotions that are difficult to ignore. Regret often surfaces first. He begins to replay moments in his mind, looking for clues for things he might have said or done differently. It's a humbling experience, one that forces him to confront his mistakes and shortcomings. In addition to regret, there's a sense of vulnerability that emerges. Men are often socialized to appear strong and unaffected, but silence has a way of stripping away those facades. Without your voice to provide reassurance or your presence to create comfort, he's left to sit with his own thoughts and emotions. Vulnerability is uncomfortable, but it's also transformative. It forces him to confront feelings he may have avoided, to acknowledge the impact of his actions, and to consider what he truly values. During this time, he may also experience a heightened sense of appreciation. The things he once overlooked, your kindness, your support, your laughter, suddenly become glaringly significant. This newfound appreciation often comes too late, but it serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of cherishing what you have before it's gone. For some men, this realization is a wake-up call, a moment of clarity that compels them to take action. They begin to understand that silence is not just an absence of sound, it's a message. And that message is loud and clear: something needs to change. The emotional response to silence is not uniform. Some men will respond with introspection and growth, while others may react with anger or defensiveness. This divergence is telling, as it reveals the depth of their emotional maturity and their capacity for self-awareness. For those who are willing to face their emotions head-on, silence becomes an opportunity for growth. It's a chance to reflect on their actions, to take responsibility, and to make amends. For others, it becomes a source of resentment, a trigger that pushes them further away. The emotional impact of silence is not just about the individual man, it's also about the dynamics of the relationship. When communication stops, the balance of power shifts. Suddenly, he is no longer in control of the narrative. He cannot explain, justify, or defend himself. Instead, he must sit with the consequences of his actions and the reality of the situation. This lack of control can be unsettling, but it's also necessary. It forces him to confront the truth, to acknowledge the role he played in creating the silence, and to decide what he wants to do moving forward. For many men, this process is a turning point. It's a moment of reckoning that challenges them to grow, to become more self-aware, and to take responsibility for their actions. It's not an easy journey, but it's a necessary one. Silence in this context is not a punishment, it's a catalyst for change. It's a way to break free from patterns of behavior that no longer serve the relationship and to create space for something better. However, it's important to note that not every man will respond to silence in a constructive way. Some may choose to ignore it, to distract themselves, or to place the blame on you. This response is not a reflection of you, but of their own limitations. Silence has the power to reveal the truth, but it cannot force someone to change. It can only create the conditions for growth, leaving the decision to act in their hands. In the end, the emotional response to silence is a testament to the power of connection. It shows that words, while important, are not the only way we communicate. Our actions or inactions speak just as loudly, if not louder. By stepping back and allowing silence to do its work, you give the other person the opportunity to confront their feelings, to reflect on their actions, and to decide what they truly want. Whether they choose to grow or not is up to them, but the clarity that silence brings is undeniable. When communication breaks down and silence takes over, a distinct shift happens. The absence of interaction compels people to reevaluate their priorities, intentions, and understanding of the relationship. In the context of a man dealing with your withdrawal, this period can bring about a profound transformation, not just in how he views the situation, but in how he perceives himself and his behaviors. This silence, though seemingly passive, carries immense power to reshape dynamics and alter mindsets. It forces him into a space where he cannot escape the void you leave behind, compelling him to look inward and ask the hard questions. During this introspection, one of the most significant realizations is the emotional depth of his connection with you. Often people take for granted the presence of those who care about them, assuming that the bond will always remain intact, regardless of how it is treated. But when the dynamic changes, when you step away, the reality of that absence becomes undeniable. He begins to notice the subtle but important ways you impacted his life. Whether it was your words of encouragement during a tough day, your consistent support, or simply the comfort of your presence, the things he overlooked suddenly take center stage in his mind. This process isn't immediate. At first, he might dismiss your absence as something temporary, something you'll come back from. But as time passes and the silence stretches on, a realization dawns on him: this isn't just a momentary phase. It's a reflection of something deeper, a boundary you've set or a stand you've taken. This realization sparks a chain reaction of emotions ranging from confusion and frustration to longing and regret. Each of these emotions serves as a mirror, reflecting the ways he has interacted with you and the choices that led to this distance. As he sits with this growing awareness, his internal dialogue shifts. He starts to question not just the relationship, but also his own role within it. Why did things reach this point? What could he have done differently? These questions are not easy to confront, but they are necessary. They create a pathway to self-awareness, a chance for him to see his behaviors in a new light. This is where the real work begins, as he moves beyond the surface level discomfort of silence to engage with the deeper truths it reveals. One of the most profound realizations during this time is how much of his identity was tied to the dynamic you shared. Whether consciously or unconsciously, he may have relied on you to fill emotional gaps, provide reassurance, or even validate his sense of self-worth. When that is taken away, it leaves a void, one that cannot easily be filled by distractions or other relationships. This void becomes a powerful motivator for change. It pushes him to confront the parts of himself that he may have neglected, avoided, or bare of. The process of coming to terms with this can be both humbling and empowering. On one hand, he must face the reality of his shortcomings, the ways he may have taken you for granted, misunderstood your needs, or failed to communicate effectively. On the other hand, this awareness gives him the opportunity to grow, to become a better version of himself, not just for you, but for his own well-being. It's a chance to learn from the past and approach the future with greater intentionality. However, this transformation isn't guaranteed. Not everyone is willing or able to confront these truths. For some, the discomfort of self-reflection might be too much to bear, leading them to retreat further into denial or defensiveness. They might place the blame on you, rationalize their actions, or try to move on without addressing the deeper issues. This response, while frustrating, is telling. It reveals a lack of emotional maturity and a resistance to growth. It's a reminder that silence, while powerful, cannot force someone to change. It can only create the conditions for transformation. The choice to step into that space is ultimately theirs. For those who do embrace the opportunity for growth, the journey is transformative. They begin to see the value of what they had and the importance of nurturing it. They learn to communicate more effectively, to show appreciation, and to prioritize the relationships that matter most. This shift doesn't just benefit the relationship, it benefits them as individuals, making them more self-aware, empathetic, and capable of forming deeper connections. The ripple effects of this process are profound. It's not just about the immediate dynamic between the two of you, it's about the broader lessons it imparts. It teaches him the importance of being present, of listening, and of valuing the people in his life. These are lessons that extend beyond your relationship, shaping how he interacts with others and how he approaches life as a whole. Ultimately, the power of silence lies in its ability to create space for reflection, for growth, and for change. By stepping back and allowing him to sit with the silence, you give him the opportunity to confront his own emotions, to recognize the impact of his actions, and to decide what kind of person he wants to be. Whether he chooses to step into that space is up to him, but the clarity and transformation it offers are undeniable. The silence speaks volumes, carrying a message that words alone could never convey. When you withdraw from someone's life, a profound sense of finality can settle over the relationship. This creates an environment where every remaining action and inaction becomes magnified in its significance. For the man who once relied on your presence, this withdrawal signals a boundary, a clear line that he is no longer welcome to cross without reflection or accountability. This boundary doesn't merely represent distance, it's a reflection of your self-respect and a declaration that you won't tolerate certain behaviors or dynamics. This realization alone can evoke a powerful emotional response, compelling him to evaluate his actions and intentions. In the absence of communication, he might initially experience denial, brushing off your absence as temporary or inconsequential. However, as days turn into weeks, the weight of your absence becomes undeniable. Without your voice, your warmth, or your consistent engagement, his world begins to feel quieter and less vibrant. He may start to replay past conversations, wondering if there were hidden signs he missed or if there was a moment when he could have acted differently. This phase of introspection, though uncomfortable, is critical for his growth and understanding. The silence also forces him to sit with his emotions without the usual distractions or excuses. He has no choice but to confront the void you've left behind. This can lead to feelings of regret as he starts to grasp the depth of what he's lost. Every memory of you becomes a reminder of the connection that once was, and he begins to understand the unique role you played in his life. Whether it's your unwavering support, your perspective on life, or even the small, seemingly insignificant moments you shared, these memories take on new meaning in your absence. As time goes on, the reality of the boundary you set starts to settle in. He realizes that reaching out to you isn't as simple as sending a message or making a call. The silence has reshaped the dynamic between you, and he understands that any attempt to reconnect must come from a place of genuine effort and humility. This realization can spark a deep sense of longing, driving him to reflect on his own shortcomings and the ways he may have taken you for granted. The silence becomes a mirror reflecting not just his actions, but also the motivations and patterns behind them. For some, this period of reflection leads to growth and transformation. They start to see the value of what they lost and understand the need to approach relationships with greater care and respect. They recognize the importance of listening, of being present, and of valuing the people in their lives. This growth isn't limited to their relationship with you. It extends to how they interact with others and how they navigate their own lives. It's a chance for them to become more self-aware, compassionate, and emotionally mature. However, not everyone has the capacity or willingness to engage in this level of introspection. For others, the silence might be met with defensiveness or blame. They might rationalize their actions or convince themselves that your withdrawal was unwarranted. This response reveals a resistance to growth and a lack of emotional maturity. It's a stark contrast to those who embrace the discomfort of silence and use it as a catalyst for change. For you, this silence is a statement of empowerment. It's a way of reclaiming your space and reinforcing your boundaries. It's a declaration that your worth isn't tied to someone else's validation or approval. By stepping back, you give yourself the opportunity to focus on your own growth and well-being, free from the dynamics that once weighed you down. This isn't an act of revenge or manipulation, it's an act of self-love and respect. The ripple effects of this choice are profound. As you prioritize your own needs and growth, you inspire others to do the same. Your silence becomes a powerful reminder of the importance of self-respect and the value of boundaries. It sends a clear message that relationships should be built on mutual respect, understanding, and effort, not one-sided dynamics or complacency. Ultimately, the power of stepping back and staying silent lies in the clarity it brings. It allows you to see who is willing to step up and meet you where you are, and who is content to remain in their patterns. It forces others to confront the consequences of their actions and decide whether they're willing to change. And for you, it reaffirms your worth and the strength it takes to prioritize yourself. In the silence, there is a powerful truth. Sometimes the most transformative actions are the ones we don't take.